So, nature versus nurture. Who is right? What actually has the biggest impact on an adopted kid? Is it nature, his biology, or nurture? The environment of his adoptive parents. Today, we're gonna dive into that. So get yourself that cup of tea. Be Ukrainian with me today. Let's grab some tea, chill, and discuss this fascinating topic. And to stay up to speed on all things about adoption, living with a cleft palate, aka yours truly, and just all things as far as overcoming those types of hurdles that might prevent us from living our fullest life, please subscribe. Not only does it help the channel, and I am so grateful and appreciative of it, it is just super fun to have a community of people who really care about this topic and would love to see more people knowing about it, more people understanding about it. And speaking of which, here's all of our amazing subscribers. Oh, thank you so very much. All 68 of you, that is where we're at. I'm so grateful and humbled that you have decided to join this channel. So tremendously grateful. And if you're interested in getting notified every single time I post a video, it's not that many times. I promise you, I'm not gonna spam you. It's just once a week. Saturday morning, you're gonna wake up, wake your sleepy eyes up, get yourself a cup of coffee, chill on the couch, and just wake up and watch a video if you like. You know, a fun way to kick off your Saturday. But no matter what, that is the time that we post. And if you hit the notification bell, it'll give you a nice little ding friendly reminder to let you know a new video is up. So what even is this whole idea and concept of nature versus nurture? Why is it a big deal? Is it a big deal? Is it even a deal? Well, let's first of all just define what it is, and then we can go from there. So when it comes to the whole nature versus nurture theory, you have different camps, and the one camp says, hey, nature is really the thing driving who this child is going to become when they're an adult. So for instance, their biology, their genes, and really what they got from their biological parents, that is really the largest factor in determining who they are going to be when they are an adult. The nurture side of the argument would say that how they are raised is really what's really affecting them. So they would say what type of environment they were in, how their parents approached the concept of discipline and raising them, how they were in school and how that environment was. Were they with biological siblings, adopted siblings? How did all of that work out? So that is really what we're looking at today. Nature, biology, and genes, and nurture. That is how they were raised, the type of environment, etc. Now, as we're talking about the whole genetic makeup versus the environment that people are raised in, I think it's really important to step back, give ourselves an aerial view, and first of all, just talk about there are intrinsic values and qualities that we all, and desires that we all as humans possess. And I'm actually gonna bring up my little vision board here. And as I go through all of these different categories, I'm gonna bring this right up here, hopefully you can still see it. As I discuss all these different categories, I think you're gonna be really surprised to see that, wow, like even without me actually sitting down and very rationally thinking, hey, all of these different needs, I need to make sure they're on my vision board and covered. No, they just kind of manifest through our core desires. And so that's what we're gonna first of all touch on right now. So as we're introducing these 5 needs, these are going to be based on Abraham Maslow's basic theory of needs. And quickly looking at the screen, you can see that his hierarchy of needs is a theory of motivation which states that 5 categories of human needs dictate an individual's behavior. Those needs are physiological needs, safety needs, love and belonging needs, esteem needs, and then self-actualization needs. And I find it very fascinating that the way he has the pyramid set up, because at the very bottom you have your most basic needs, and before you can move on to the next level, you have to have that first need being met, because if you do not have, especially when it comes to the 5th one, what he calls self-actualization, if you're not having that first core need met, then you probably don't really have the time or the space to really even think about getting to the top I absolutely am. In some ways, I would say I'm a little bit like a psychology junkie. I love just learning how humans are wired, how we think, how we process life. And so just to do a quick dive into these physiological needs, those are gonna be your core needs. Safety, your shelter, your food, your health, just reproduction, everything that makes you like your human physical body function and operate. That is going to be at the very bottom of the pyramid. And if you look on my board, you can see that we do have some of that. Let's see if I have that on my board. Maybe not. I mean, I do have a house. We were going to put a house on here, but I don't think I have one right now. But anyway, moving on to the second one is safety needs. And this is safety not just physically, but financially, relationally. So you can see up here I have us with our relationship, because obviously we want to have a good relationship. And then we've got our financial safety needs down here. We want to have the goal of being debt-free, because that gives you a sense of financial security. Moving on to the third need, you have your love and belonging need. And like I said, I already have it up here. I don't know if there's any other place here that I can really see it manifested, but with love and belonging, it's really the need for community, whether it be with a spouse, a friend, a roommate, a club, a church, a community. Just people is what we need. Basically, we're not meant to be the hermit living on the North Pole. So that is going to be need number 3. The fourth need, I think this is a really fascinating one, is the self-esteem and confidence need. And there's 2 different ways that this can be manifested and kind of shown in your life. You've got your self-esteem. This is more knowing how you look in the eyes of other people. What do other people think about you? Having respect from them, recognizing that you are valuable, etc. from other people. Self-confidence is more like an inner thing. You have your confidence in yourself coming from within, knowing who you are, knowing what your value is. And then the fifth and the final and probably the most fun need that we think of is self-actualization. And many of the things on my board you'll see are those things. We've got business, starting a business, and kind of some of my hobbies that we have here. You've got academics, you'll see over here. You've got spirituality. You have learning the Russian language. Then we have our morning, how we want to live our life and how we want our focus to be as we go throughout the day. And when you have the other needs met, you have time to really tap into the highest level of yourself, if you will. And this is where you get to really develop yourself as a person. And you can see how this, just as a little side note, you can see how people who are struggling with the basic needs of food, or if they don't have healthy relationships, they may never reach their true potential. Not because they don't have any potential, but because there's something seriously lacking in a real need of their life that's more urgent and calling more of their attention. So that's where the beauty of having that healthy environment really comes into play. And you'll even notice that even with adopted children, how do they grow up and what kind of adults do they form into? A lot of it has to go back to the 4 basic needs. As somebody who has taken the time to take a look at all of this and consider how different am I from my parents or my siblings or all of those different aspects, it's just such a fascinating subject. And I have done some research into this and drawn from several studies. So you'll be seeing some of that information presented throughout. So with all of those, with both the personal and the research element, I'm hoping you'll find this to be very informative as we go along. Moving on to how the differences between nature versus nurture might be manifested, we are just going to be scratching the surface today. So I definitely encourage you to leave any questions, comments, and I can definitely delve into it more in a future video. But the first area is going to be health. And in this way, it's kind of assumed / a given, and I had mentioned this in last week's video about my adoption. If you have not watched it yet, take a peek over there. But with this, you'll notice that, of course, health-related things, those are going to be genetic. Those are, for the most part, going to be passed down from your biological parents. Now, there was a unique study done in Sweden that did actually have some interesting things to offer into this. And it was related to, does education of the parents, whether it be biological versus adopted, have an impact on the lifespan of the child? And there's actually some interesting stats. So for families where there was, say, one biological child and then one adopted child, the combined education of the parents, if the parents became more educated, it actually had an impact on the biological child as opposed to the adopted ones. So the biological child's longevity would increase, whereas for the adopted child, it did nothing. But interestingly enough, in another situation, if the mother specifically received more education, the longer the adopted child's lifespan would be. So there does seem to be a correlation between how much education the mother would have compared to the lifespan of the adoptee. So I did find that to be quite fascinating, and I will leave links to all of these articles below. Now on to the final aspect that we're going to cover for today, and that is probably the most fascinating part of all of this, and that you're probably the most interested in, and that's going to be the personality, the behavior, and where does the child get those? Because those are the most usually subjective things, obviously, that can change. So let's dive into some of those details. Now, granted, this was definitely a more tricky topic to really delve into because some studies showed one way, some the other way, but I'm just going to show you some general findings and you can just think about it, mull it over, and maybe do your own research. So for one of the areas, specifically aggressive behavior, they asked teachers, hey, who has a tendency to be more aggressive in their behavior? And there was a slight tendency towards adopted children showing more aggressive behavior as well as more misconduct. So that was something interesting to note. Adoptees are more likely to have higher results as far as negative outcomes, but also they're as likely to have positive outcomes. So there is not really like, oh, they're much more likely to have a negative outcome versus a much more positive outcome. Generally speaking, adoptees are going to be maybe tending to lean more towards one way or the other than a biological child would. Something that did keep coming up a lot in these different research articles that I noticed was some of the reasons for those behavior problems was not just because the child was adopted. It really did go back in a way to that nurture element with the parents, and they felt maybe they had a lack of resources, a lack of education, a lack of understanding on how to actually raise this child. Specifically, when it did come to the area of loss or struggling with that separation element. And in just wrapping up this general section, it is interesting to note that adoptees later on in life did tend to have some social problems and even maybe becoming antisocial. But it does seem that that is potentially linked back to their genes and biological parents, because if you think, many children are put up for adoption potentially because of things in the past from their biological parents, whether they were on substances, whether they themselves had mental disabilities and disorders or other things. And so that is something definitely to take into consideration here. Now, the final piece that we're going to talk about is my personal experience with all of this, because I know I've given you a lot of research stats and all of that, and I personally find it was really fascinating, but sometimes it's nice also just to hear from someone's perspective. So when it comes to all of this, there's definitely elements I can see of my family in me. For instance, we grew up in Massachusetts. There's a certain way and vibe that Massachusetts people operate. The way we talk, the way we speak, how we may not say hi to you in the grocery store. It's not that we want to be offensive, it's just we got the grocery shopping to get done. And coming to Virginia, that's definitely a very different way of operating. So there are elements that I've acquired from them. Also, when you think of values and different systems that you're used to operating under, say like, what does respect look like, and how were you taught to respect social interactions? How do you interact with people? Thinking about careers and values of family, and what does all of that look like? So all of that definitely is influenced a lot, of course, by your parents. Now, there are some things that I feel that I'm very different in. Part of that would probably be my personality. Out of all of the people in my family, I definitely am probably one of the most quirky personalities, and I'm one of those people I like to try a lot of different things. I love experimenting with a lot of different things and have a lot of hobbies and a lot of different interests. Even in the differences of my parents' biological kids, for instance, some of them are very interested in sports and athletics and all of that, but I think some of it does go back to just the fact that we were raised also slightly different. Even we call them like two sets of kids, we had slightly different upbringings there as well, so I think that played a big role in it. But I think really the biggest thing is like, who am I, like the core of what makes me me. I think that part can probably be partially traced back to my biological family and really thinking about their personalities. Are they friendly, bubbly, outgoing? How did they do life? All of that. And I think that's the part that would be fascinating if I ever did meet them, or if I knew who they were and how they operated, what their personalities were like. That's where it'd be really interesting. And I am going to, as I think I previously mentioned, I'm going to slowly start just building a website, maybe of some of these resources. So I definitely recommend checking out other adoptee stories and how they felt about the nature versus nurture, because there's a very wide variety of opinions on this topic, so it's super duper fascinating. So I will link those below in the description. Since you're still here, you obviously like this video, yes. If you would, that's supposed to be a hint to like the video. That really does help the channel, just because it does raise awareness for everybody else. And as I had promised, I'm going to share my subscriber number that I'm aiming for this year. Now, I am saying this out loud. In my head, I might have a larger number or a smaller number, but I do love the number 7, so my goal is going to have the number 7 in it. And currently, I think it would be absolutely incredible if we could reach 7,000 subscribers in the community by the end of the year. I do have a goal, maybe adding even another 0 to that. I know that's such a big, audacious goal. I'm a big dreamer, what can I say? But I'm not gonna stress about it too much, but I do wanna let all of you know that if you know anybody who you think might be interested in adoption, or maybe somebody who's struggling with, like I said, a physical disability or like a deformity, or just really wondering like, how can I be confident when I have this big hurdle, especially if it's something so obvious, or maybe these different things that you're working through. If you want, you can send them over here. And so I'm so grateful to my current subscribers. You are so encouraging. I'm so thankful for all the sweet comments that I've gotten. It's unbelievable. And of course, building a YouTube channel, it is definitely a lot of work. It's a big project, but I really felt that this was a good time in my life, a good season to try to undertake this. So I really cannot thank you enough for all of your love and support. But that is the goal. 7,000, 70,000 is really the big goal, and that's where it's just going to be me trusting, having faith, and whatever it's supposed to happen with the channel will happen with the channel. All I can do is try to make great videos, uplifting each other, educating each other, and encouraging each other. I hope you guys have an amazing Saturday. You deserve it. Kick up your feet, relax, drink that extra cup of coffee, and I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If there's any topics you'd be interested in, please leave them below and I would be delighted to make a video on them. So without further ado, have a great Saturday. Bye! Don't look back, don't forget.